Hey everyone, Cursed Deck Builder here, making our way to 10,000 decks assisted. And we have here a Wulfgar of Icewind Dale deck. This deck was submitted to us through the form you can find in the YouTube description below. And this comes to us from Joe Geed, who says they're not sure what needs improvement, but consistency and a better mana curve is on their mind. And their deck building restrictions are asking that we shouldn't go over a $400 budget. That's quite a budget. I don't think we'll be hitting that. So you can rest assured you can improve this deck without spending $400. As always, the deck list is in the video description below, and I highly recommend that you open it up on your side while watching or listening to this video. Check out the deck list yourself, see what changes you would make, what ideas you might have, and see if you and I agree on the changes and ideas. After which, if you think of anything I don't, feel free to put it in the comments below so we can work together to make this deck better. So who is Wulfgar and why are we using them as our commander? Wulfgar is a 5-mana 4/4 human barbarian that has melee, which means when it attacks, it counts the number of opponents you're attacking and adds that much in +1/+1 for the turn. And then the more important trigger is that whenever an attack trigger, I'm just going to read it. If a creature you control attacking would cause a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers a second time. Basically, it means all your attack triggers on your cards trigger twice. Pretty great. It affects the melee that is above it in the text box, but we really only care about that second part of the text. All of our attack triggers trigger twice. Before we see what kind of attack triggers we have in the deck, let's take a look at the curve. And this is quite a curve. You can see here it goes up to 9, but it's Blasphemous Act, so we're gonna ignore that. And so it goes up to 7. It has a nice little round to 3, and then it drops off entirely. We have 22 cards at 3 mana, which feels particularly high. We could probably even this out, and so that's something we're going to be looking at. So how do we improve a deck like this? Well, something that I find really interesting is that you have a lot of ramp. I would consider this a lot of ramp. You are playing all these 1-drops. You have these 2-mana ramp cards. You're playing Soul Ring and Arcane Signet. And then down here, you are playing 36 up to 37 lands. And even more of that, we have cards like Savage Ventmaw and Rada, small Rada here, that also add more mana. Goblin Archaeomancer is technically a dork as well. Biophagus is a dork. This is a lot of mana here. Now, the thing that's interesting about how much mana we have is we don't really have much to do with it. We're going to run out of cards because we don't have very, very many draw effects. Beast Whisperer is the one that kind of sticks out here. I would like to see Guardian Project as well, which also draws whenever a creature enters the battlefield, as long as it doesn't share a name with another creature on your side, which is fine because we're playing Commander and you don't have clone effects. Yeah, and Garruk's Uprising is too slow. No, this is the other one. No, this is fine. Okay, I was thinking it's the other one where it checks on upkeep, so that's fine. Okay, so we have a lot of mana and we have precious few to actually do with the mana. Cards like Anger are particularly interesting because Anger belongs in the graveyard, but I don't really see an easy way to put that in the graveyard itself. In fact, I see a lot more enter the battlefield effects than I do attack triggers, which is really, really interesting to me. Now, I don't necessarily disagree with that choice because I do think you do want effects like Wood Elves and Rex Sage and Ewit, but it's strange to me that we don't have more attack triggers in our attack trigger deck. Bane of Progress is a perfect example of this. Bane of Progress is a particularly strong card at 6 mana, but it is an enter the battlefield effect and not an attack trigger. At 6 mana, these should be the payoffs of your deck. Bane of Progress is great, but here you want to be using different kinds of cards for that same effect. So it kind of stands out to me as a bit of a strange choice. Now, okay, I thought this was a different card, so that's going to change my point here. So we have even Simian Spirit Guide feels a little strange. You are ramping incredibly fast, but you don't really, there's not much to ramp into. Even Bane of Balaged, who is particularly strong as an attack doubled when you attack with it, the defending player exiles 4 permanents. Um, I mean, it's going to get removed, right? It is particularly susceptible to removal card. So let's see what we can add. The first thing I want to look at is I want to look at cards that I feel like we're missing for attack triggers. Looking at the Radhas, I feel like we're missing our 4 mana one here that adds mana, much like Savage Vent Maw. This will add a bunch of mana based on the creatures you attack with. She has haste herself, which is really nice here. So I do really like that. I think that's the only one that I really want. Radha's Firebrand attacks. Yeah, definitely Grand Warlord Radha and Small Radha are our best friends. I would like to play both of them because they both have really good on attack triggers. Likewise, something I feel like is missing is Tectonic Giants, another particularly cheap card. We'll give it a second to load at like a quarter to $1. And this one has another attack trigger where it bolts on attack or exiles cards off the top of your deck so that you can cast it on that turn. This also triggers when your opponent tries to remove Tectonic Giant. I really like that. Your 4-drop section is particularly low. I'd like another card in there. After there, I am going to start looking for other cards. Let me see. Pack Leader. Is it Werewolf Pack Leader? Yes. Werewolf Pack Leader is another one of these attacks triggers. It says if you attack with 6 power or greater, draw a card. In this deck, it is very easy for you to hit the 6 power, and then with your commander out, it's going to trigger twice. So I think this is particularly powerful here. It also enables us to do things at a low cost. It's only a few bucks, but it lets us ramp out by repeatedly drawing cards and using that mana ramp to then play the cards we draw and therefore build a very quick board. In a similar kind of vein, Duran, am I saying that right? Is it Yawning Portal? Scryfall is being a little rude today. Durnan of Yawning Portal is another attacks, looks at the top 4, exile a creature card from them, put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. For as long as that card remains exiled, you may cast it. That spell has Undaunted. So it costs 1 less for each opponent. That's a lot of text for every time this creature attacks. Look at the top 4, exile a creature, and you can cast that. Doing that twice is basically drawing twice. This card doesn't go away, I believe, even if Durnan leaves play. Where is Durnan? It doesn't say here, as far as I can see. But at the same point, I do think you can continue to cast it because it's all one text, and Durnan itself does not allow you to cast it. It is the exiling of the card that allows you to cast it. So even if you lose this creature, you get to keep casting it, which is really, really cool. And then the last one that comes to mind is Pathbreaker. Ibex is very, very strong here. Every time it attacks, all your creatures gain trample and get +X/+X, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. You know, I'm realizing that in a previous version, I thought it was Pathbreaker's Ibex, its own power that was added. I forgot that it was the greatest power added. That's interesting. I think that was the Xenagos deck that I may have misread it. But regardless, here, considering the size of your creatures, where's our, whoops, Where's our commander? We just lost Scryfall, that's fine. Our commander is attacking as a 4/4. Now it does grow. He does grow, but he grows as an attack trigger, which means all the attack triggers. Actually, if you stack the attack triggers, that's fine. So you get all the melee triggers to go off first, and then when Pathbreaker Ibex checks Wulfgar's power, it'll add that power to all of your creatures, and then it will do that again. Yeah, this is a really good card here. Yeah, Pathbreaker Ibex. I know it's probably a little more expensive than I'd like. Yeah, it's about $13, but it's really, really strong here because it's the type of ability that compounds on itself. It grows your whole board and then checks that grown board to grow it again, which I really, really like here. This also allows you to continue to play all of these little dorks that you have because now they represent a substantial threat with cards like Pathbreaker Ibex. Which makes me want to go take this text, put it in here, control get, because get is for power. Actually, we don't need it. We just need it to be a permanent. It doesn't even need to be a creature. So this is kind of the search I would do myself. And I would be looking for whenever Tuya Bearclaw attacks, it gets this much. This one doesn't give it to your team, but I think it's a sheep. She'll gain the effect herself. Let's see if there's anything else. When this attacks, you gain 2 life. Creatures you control get trample and X. Yeah. So this would be another version of that I like quite a bit. Blossoming Bog Beast. Whenever it attacks, you gain 2 life. The creatures you control gain trample and +X, which is the amount of life you gain. Which, if you note, if that happens twice, they gain +2 and then they gain +4. So just without any additional life gain, you are gaining +6 in trample across your board. Very, very nice. I do particularly like that. Now, I would do this search for other ideas. I'm not going to know all of them. I know there's Inferno Titan, I think. Inferno Titan has an attack trigger of basically doing 3 damage divided as you'd like. I think that's fine. I think things like Pathbreaker Ibex are just going to be much stronger, but this is a very, very budget choice if you would like. Though you can't play Primeval Titan, Elder Gargaroth is an imitation where it has an attack trigger. And once again, this trigger is not as good. I don't particularly like it. You can draw 2 cards or make 2 3/3s. I think that's fine. But it is definitely an option. Oh, okay, maybe not at that price point. That's too much money for an effect like this. Don't play this card. I really don't. So those are the cards. I would do that search and see what else you find that I haven't found. Definitely when the text is like whenever attacks, see what you can find. Something like I like the idea you're doing here, where instead of doing 1 or 2 big triggers, you're doing triggers that function off of a very wide board. So something like Hellrider here is really, really strong because it adds 2 damage basically to every attacker, much like a battle cry, but it doesn't need the creature to connect to do that damage, which is really cool. It also has haste, which is really nice. And speaking of haste, as always, if I can spell drawbridge, crashing drawbridge should be in there. Crashing drawbridge represents turning your entire board into a haste group for 1 quick attack. It also allows you to be on point every time you play a creature. You can give it haste and keep attacking. If you want to go for something a bit stronger, Concordant Crossroads is the stronger version in your colors. However, it gives all creatures haste, so be aware that your opponents will benefit from it too, which is fine because you don't want them to have blockers anyways. So the best way to make sure they don't have blockers is to force them, to give them incentive to attack other players. But with Concordant Crossroads, all of your creatures all of a sudden can attack right away and grow a bit stronger. Those would generally be the points that I would say for this deck. I feel like it is a bit of an early draft. It feels a little inconsistent in what it wants to do. Cards like Bone Crusher Giant kind of stick out here as a strong card for sure, especially in 60 card formats with one opponent, but a generally okay card here. Shock, as in dealing 2 damage to something, isn't that great. And though technically you can use this in response to like a fog for something really cool, I don't really think it's worth it. Bone Crusher Giant doesn't have an attack trigger, so it just doesn't really belong here. Likewise, Sakura Tribe Elder is traditionally seen in decks that care about the sacrifice or decks that want to ramp really badly. And I don't think you are either of those. You have a lot of early ramp that you can turn into attackers. Um, you don't need the mana from Sakura Tribe Elder. Also, likewise, Simian Spirit Guide just doesn't belong here. Losing a card in order to power something out is a much higher level, like a higher power level in decks, because I don't think you have anything here you particularly need to power out that quickly. Runic Armasaur feels strange here as well. Like this is a card that sees a lot of play at higher power levels because there's a lot more triggers. So I won't say anything because maybe your table uses a lot of activated abilities, but if it doesn't, I would probably take this out. It's a 3 mana card that can do nothing on the in the right when it's on the wrong table. Anything else that comes to mind? Hand to hand. Instances and abilities requiring an activation cost cannot be played during combat. This is an interesting choice. I'm not sure what you're protecting yourself from. This is really, really good if you want to make one attack, one really, really powerful attack that swings the game in a very polarizing way. But you're not doing that here, so I don't see that being as good. I like this as a haste enabler. Rhythm of the Wild is great. Shadow of the Warp is great. Okay. The rest of the deck I feel is particularly strong, so I do like it. Your mana base looks great. So I think if you fix up the creatures, you might have you might have a stronger deck just by that. You might be happy with just doing that. But after which, if you put together another draft, I'd love to look at it again because I can see this deck being particularly strong. Like, especially the non-creatures feel strong. It just feels like the creature base is a little clumsy. And I think with a little tuning, it's going to grow in power dramatically. And with that, you'll be a lot happier. I'm going to take a moment to talk about Lightning Bolt in Commander because we have it here and it's a good time. I really like Lightning Bolt in Commander. I think it has a bad rep as it doesn't do enough. But Red kind of has a problem with removing creatures in Commander. It's not as easy. Red leans on Blasphemous Act effects. Damage, a gigantic amount of damage across the board to wipe boards, or even sometimes just to kill 1 or 2 creatures. Having something like Lightning Bolt is really, really powerful. People are used to just using Swords to Plowshares, but Lightning Bolt does kill a large amount of commanders, and having a 1 mana deal with a commander card is really, really good. Being able to really be up on the exchange in mana and being to tempo out your opponents, especially in a deck like this that benefits very, very heavily by keeping your opponent's board empty so that you can swing in again. I really like it. I think it's a really good inclusion here. And I would recommend people who have not really liked this card to give it a second look in Commander because there's a reason it's one of the strongest cards in Magic. All right, I hope the things I've pointed out do help. I am interested in seeing the next draft. I think this deck has a lot of potential. If you'd like to send me the next draft, you can use the form that's in the video description below, or if you have any other any other decks you'd like me to make videos on, please use that form, send it along. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe to the YouTube thing. Our channel is small, and clicking one of those buttons is incredibly helpful. So I would be very grateful if you did. All right. Good luck, and I look forward to seeing what this deck becomes.